everybody, welcome to one more round. Today I'm very excited. I've got one of my very good friends with me, Dominic Majors, the owner of Majors Law Group. And Dom and I, we go back quite a ways now. Known each other since he started his practice, and it's just been a lot of fun to watch it grow. But with the economy being the way it is over the last 4 years, all the changes, he and I were talking, and we thought this would be a really good time to discuss some of that. So welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. Yeah, Josh, it's been, long time, and yeah, it's great to be connected. So.
Yeah, I think you're about to celebrate 5 years here in like 4 or 5 months, right?
Yep, so June will be our 5th year open. We opened in 2019, but like you said, year after year, we've kind of just focused on, growing one client at a time. We focus on putting our clients first, and at the end of the day, we love helping our clients. So.
Yeah, and I've known that. Like I've known a few people that you have personally worked with you. Obviously, I worked with you on the business side, but like people that have really been in the bad positions that have talked to you and like, man, I'm so glad and just to see the relief come off of them because it's tough, man. I think it was 2009. 2009, we were in a whole lot of business debt, and unfortunately, we had to go through the process in 2009, right. And it was not fun whatsoever. And I look back, I'm like, it was all business debt. It wasn't like I was driving Ferraris that I couldn't pay for or anything like that. Yeah. And, going through that process and getting that fresh start, really helped the trajectory of the next 10 years of our lives.
Right. Especially, it cycles, but, we went through something unprecedented with COVID. We opened in 2019, COVID happened. And it changed a lot of things for business and people, and we're starting to see that stuff catch up. But it's not where you're from; it's where you're at. There's opportunities to grow through that stuff, and things get better. You got to be proactive, and sometimes the hardest thing that we see with clients is just acknowledging that it is what it is, and there are options. So very fortunate to be able to help those folks, and would love to share the knowledge.
So what are some of the things that you recommend if people, let's say some red flags that are happening in somebody's financial world, that they should start entertaining other options than just trying to grind it out?
Right. So I always, first off, when we analyze someone's situation, we take a big picture approach, right? And to help to understand where everyone's at as far as because everyone's financial schemes are different. But the biggest thing I tell clients is when you start having to sell your protected assets, whether it's a retirement account or trying to pull out equity of your home to pay like your bills or pay off some of your debts, that's like the first indicator that what you have going on isn't working. So, for instance, you have a bunch of money into an IRA or a whole life insurance policy. Generally, those things are protected in bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. So when clients come to me and we're in an initial consultation and they're like, well, why don't we just pull money out and pay our creditors? I'm like, why would we do that? Why wouldn't we just hit the reset button, protect what you have, and let you rehabilitate and rebuild after filing? Because a lot of people within a year are able to rehabilitate their credit. Within 2 years, you can be eligible for FHA mortgages or a VA mortgage. And then within 3 years, you could potentially be qualified for a conventional mortgage. Obviously it depends on income. I'm not a financial advisor, but I've helped a lot of people, and I've consistently seen over the years, people before the 2-year mark are like, hey, I need this document because I just got pre-approved for a mortgage. I'm like, great. So there's certainly life after bankruptcy. But to answer your question, we look at, we don't want to liquidate things that are protected, and we ultimately want to break those cycles of robbing Peter to pay Paul, using a credit card, paying it off, because those revolving debt cycles are designed in themselves to keep you in it. Unless you come up with a large sum of money to pay it off, they're meant to keep. That's why the banks do so well. That's why they make all that money. So.
Yeah, and to the credit card point, it's insane. I think the average credit card right now is at 27% interest, right. And if you really calculate that down, that's like 2.5% a month on whatever you have revolving. That is just hitting over and over and compounding. It's compounding the wrong way.
Right. And if you look at the statements, they'll usually break them down. And forgive me, I didn't go to math school, but I know that 27% interest on a credit card is absolutely just, it can be, it never works out generally for those who just use them and don't pay them off immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your thoughts on credit cards? Obviously, everybody you deal with, I'm sure, has some sort of relationship with credit cards, in a negative way for the most part.
My personal thought is, I mean, for business and travel, I mean, there's certain things that you better off using them for, so that you don't, for risk and things like that. In terms of traveling, right? I could see that's probably the most common uses for a consumer. Me personally, I think if you don't need a credit card, you shouldn't use it, and you shouldn't establish a lifestyle where you borrow money and then just. And me personally, you should really avoid using credit cards unless you know that you can pay it off within a reasonable amount of time, and not consider it like a loan, because
Right.
a loan usually can be a lower interest. You know what you're going to pay over a certain amount of time. Credit cards, life could happen. You might lose your income, and then you're stuck with these large revolving debt payments. And quite frankly, I think they're designed that way to keep people in them, so the banks make money.
Absolutely, and it's fair. I know that the new administration, I'm trying to remember the exact, I think they're trying to lower it for a period of time to where the max they can charge is 10%.
I've heard something like that, yeah.
Yeah, which I think would be great to kind of help people maybe get out of that situation. But it was very interesting. You were talking about being able to protect certain assets in bankruptcy. Like, what are those assets, and then why is it protected in bankruptcy?
So the bankruptcy code, or I guess let's keep it narrow here, but so asset protection in bankruptcy. When Congress enacted the bankruptcy code, their intent was to not take things away from people necessarily, and each state, whether they opt out and use the federal exemptions or their state exemptions, there's a rule that says you can protect a certain piece of property up to a certain amount. So, for instance, Arizona has its own rules under the Arizona revised statutes that say you can protect a house with a certain amount of equity, which is a little over $400,000. So your house could technically be paid for up to $400,000, and you could file bankruptcy and fully protect it, right? So a house, your bank accounts, your equity in your vehicles, retirement accounts, a certain amount of your wages, if you were owed wages at the time of filing, like a paycheck you hadn't received yet, there's a certain percentage that you can protect. But it's generally most of a debtor's personal property. So your household goods, those kinds of things. So to answer your question, what can you protect? It's generally almost all the things that you have. In fact, when a client comes to me, we really vet out things that would be unprotected, like an excessive amount of money in a bank account, or maybe that collectible item, Mickey Mantle baseball card that's worth a crazy amount of money. But generally, we see that we're able to protect most of our clients' assets.
So my Mickey Mantle wouldn't be protected?
No, it wouldn't. I mean, unless, depending on its value, but those things are, I've seen some pretty pricey cards, and they're not as common, and I think that's why they're so valuable. But yeah, if you have a Mickey Mantle, hold on to that thing. It's only going to go up.
Absolutely. So the last 4 years have been tough on businesses for sure. There were a lot of loans were given out without, let's just say, all of the details given. Like, hey, it's free money. It's kind of how it was presented, and then it's like, oh no, we want that money back. What do you say? Like, what are you seeing in the small business world right now?
So for small businesses, so COVID, again, we went through these, we saw a lot of businesses getting the PPP money, which really isn't what I'm seeing as far as the SBA going after those folks. I mean, people that did it fraudulently, there's people being pursued for that. But a big thing right now that I've seen a lot of small businesses deal with is these EIDL loans, the Emergency Disaster Relief Loan, right? So the business is struggling. You would go to the SBA, and they would essentially give you, a very decent amount of money. And it's every business. It's brick and mortar retail businesses. It's service related industries. There wasn't really, everybody that had a business could apply. And now what we're seeing is these businesses that took out these EIDL loans, payments are becoming due. In fact, they've become due probably within the last few months. And so these businesses that took out these huge EIDL loans are now having, if you took out $1 million, you're going to be paying a hefty, debt payment.
Yeah.
So we're seeing businesses that haven't quite caught up from COVID now having these debt payments become due, and it's really making a decision. Hey, is it feasible to operate or continue? And unfortunately, it's led to some businesses have to close. And I think when you add up everything from COVID, just the way the landscape for just the retail businesses, franchises, people just aren't frequenting some of these businesses as they were before, and unfortunately, we're seeing just more businesses have to seek relief.
Yeah.
So
So, what does life after bankruptcy look like for somebody who is self-employed? Let's just say they had a company of 50 people, and because of things, circumstances, they've had to. And I know there's different bankruptcies for
right.
that. Maybe you can speak on it. But what does their life look like? What can they do afterwards?
So usually, when it comes to an individual, they can rebuild, and after well, it depends on the chapter, right? There's for consumers, we mostly handle Chapter 7 and 13. In a business that is going through a Chapter 7, you're going to liquidate, all your assets and basically wind down your company. Unless you're a service-related business, like, if you're, let's say, a masseuse or a cosmetologist, those guys will be able to they will be able to continue to work, but then they have to, you go through the bankruptcy process, right? But a business that had maybe a franchise with, I won't name any retail businesses, but franchise business that might have been like a sandwich shop, those companies just they go away. The individual files bankruptcy, and then they rebuild.
They would liquidate like their kitchen equipment, their trucks, if
Right.
they have any of those types of things.
Inventory, when we get involved with a business that's at that point, depending on where they're at in business, I try to give them an opportunity to wind it down and do it in phases, and not just shut down the door. Because when you dissolve a business, you have to also keep in mind there's taxes you have to pay. If you have employees, you want to make sure your wages are done. So timing is crucial, right? Because you don't want to close a business without paying your taxes, having unpaid wage claims, because these can create all sorts of other issues. And so what we try to do in these instances where a business is projecting losses that they're not going to be able to bounce back from, we do effective bankruptcy planning. So we don't just rush in. We don't go rush down to the bankruptcy court and file their documents. We work with them, consult with them, get all their ducks in a row in the sense that, make sure you liquidate everything you can before filing. You pay your taxes, pay your employees, and if there's some money that you can pay yourself as a dividend afterwards, great. If not, then we just find effective ways to spend that money down.
Awesome. Yeah. Now, the last year, it seemed like bankruptcies were up. Is that just my thinking, or in general, was it?
I would say it's been on the upward trend. COVID did something weird. When COVID happened, I anticipated that everybody was going to be filing because people weren't working. It was a crazy time for everybody. But with all that relief money people were getting through all the funds that were being given by the government, the PPP money, everybody was just chilling.
Yeah.
So nobody was like, we're like, we don't need anything. They were just some people were getting more money during COVID than they were working for an employer, which I thought was absolutely crazy. Since people had that type of relief, people just didn't need to file. So bankruptcies actually plummeted during COVID. And slowly but surely, year after year after COVID, I'd say last year it's definitely picked up, but I would imagine this year is going to be where we really see some of those increase in filings, and the statistics do show that it has been increasing quite a bit.
Yeah, and it does seem like, and you and I talked about it several years ago. It's like money hadn't become real.
Right.
Right. There was all these people that had borrowed, but all this government money that was
The
coming
deferments from the banks, people
Yeah.
were just putting off. They were they weren't doing loan mods, but cars, houses, everybody was just pushing out payments because
forbearances
yeah,
and those types of
exactly.
things.
So now that all those things are kind of getting caught up, we've seen clients that were in those forbearances, which with a mortgage, when you do a forbearance, you're not modifying the loan. So eventually those past due payments become due. And if you're not able to get caught up or do a loan modification, then you might end up in a Chapter 13 so that you can reorganize and restructure. But yeah, all that stuff's catching up for sure.
Yeah. So somebody has now identified that they got a couple of red flags, and they're like, okay, I really need to look at this. What's their best course of action? Should they call you and say, hey, can you look at this?
It's always generally advisable when you feel like you should always seek legal counsel, right? When it comes to if you're considering bankruptcy. So whether you call me or another firm, always getting information, understanding the process is always smart, right? It's common sense, So when it comes to somebody that's seeing like, hey, I'm running out of money to pay my bills, or if you're just in that robbing Peter to pay Paul cycle, which is probably one of the biggest indicators, then I would say being proactive is better than waiting for something like a lawsuit or a judgment and a garnishment, right? Mm-hmm. So when clients come to me and they're not at that stage, I said, listen, you're being proactive. This is the situation. These are your rights, and this is how life can get better if you follow this course.
Yeah,
So.
and I love the legal system was put in place to be able to help people, when they're going through hard times like that, and there is an actual recourse to be
Right.
able to get your life back on track, and it's challenging. So,
It's funny you say that. I had a client the other day, actually yesterday, and she was like so fearful that someone was going to come arrest her and put her in jail, and I'm like, we don't have debtors prisons anymore. Like, this is a sophisticated way to resolve your debt issues, and so I'm very thankful for it. And the process is getting more streamlined. And it's worth mentioning, since COVID, prior to COVID, we were milling paper like the 90s. Like, we were making copies, and we had file cabinets and folders, and everything was just, there was a lot of tangible documents and physical files that we had.
yeah,
And then COVID happened, and it changed, again, a lot of things for people. But for our business, we embrace this electronic technology, right? We use, we don't request people to print things off and provide them to our office. So in terms of the bankruptcy process, historically, you'd file your case. You would then have to attend a hearing in downtown Phoenix, or if you're in Washington, in Seattle, Tacoma, Spokane. But now everything's over Zoom. So for our clients, the same client I was talking with yesterday, I jokingly said to her, I said, you could essentially go through this whole process in your pajamas. I mean, obviously, when you go to your Zoom hearing, do the button up top like me, and I do gym shorts on the bottom. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, you know that. But so, anyways, it's interesting because COVID, I think, taught us a lot about technology, but it also made things more efficient, and I'm incredibly thankful for that. And going into this next year, and again, not to segue or harp on this, but we're doing something even more with AI. So, and like the information and document gathering process is usually very tedious. We spend a lot of time organizing things, but now we have some new things coming after the first of the year that's going to make it so incredibly easy for our clients. So super pumped about that.
that's awesome. Yeah, because like, what are the documents generally that somebody has to provide?
So normal consumer, we're talking ID, so identification documents, your driver's license, your social security card. We generally need the last 3 to 6 months of bank statements, your last 2 years of tax returns, 6 months of profit and loss if you're a business, 6 months of pay stubs. I'll rattle them off. Mortgage statement, car vehicle statement, just the general things to verify what you owe and what you pay. As far as creditor-wise, we just pull credit and just import all that information, but it's just general, personal documents that you have.
Yeah, and I know exactly what you mean on it taking a long time. So we do estate planning here, right? And the biggest time suck is once, we get through some of the basics, is I give them a questionnaire, and now they've got to go get their bank statements. They got to go get, obviously their home. We can just look that up and quitclaim and all that. But all the documentations they have so we can move the assets into the trust, it's like sometimes that takes them long. Like they paid for it and then they don't actually get it done for 3 months because they just don't want to get it all.
Well, when
done.
you're running a household, taking care of your family, and then you need to then you want to unwind after a day's work. It's a chore, but you just got to power through it.
That's right. Yeah. Do I want to dive into my Fidelity account and find my statement and in the mythical land of Fidelity?
Yep.
Yeah. So, we had talked a little bit about the spend down, for bankruptcy. Tell me a little bit about that. What does it mean?
Right. So someone, for instance, has an unexempt, meaning unprotected asset. We're all about effective bankruptcy planning. Our goal is to give you the advice and counsel so that if you had money in a bank account or maybe an extra vehicle that you weren't using that would technically be unprotected, it is okay and allowable to liquidate, or meaning sell that asset and then put it into something that's protected. So, for instance, we have clients all the time that, for instance, the car example, you have an unexempt vehicle that's worth $10,000, they don't need it, but if they file bankruptcy and they still have it, the trustee who's appointed to their case, well, essentially you have the right to take it, sell it, and then give the proceeds to your creditors. Well, in my opinion, a good lawyer should give you your advice, which is you can sell that vehicle prior to filing for fair market value, and then we send them to someone like you who gives them the good advice to putting it into a life insurance that's protected. There are certain exceptions or certain things that have to take place, which we'll obviously tell you the rules, and then they connect with you. But it goes with that, or an IRA. An IRA is fully exempt under the federal law, so you could make a contribution up to whatever the limit is, and as long as $7,000, right? So if you have that much money contributed to a retirement account, under the federal rules, it's exempt immediately. So you don't have to wait or anything like that. So those are just like the things that we do to, one, help take things that are unprotected, but ultimately come out of bankruptcy with something of value, right? Instead of having to liquidate that and spend it down on something else, like a reasonable expense, like a medical bill or, or like medical work or anything like that. It would be better to put it into something so that you could have something for the future.
Yeah, I love this because it's dispelling a lot of mysteries to people. Because I believe, and before I had ever gone through the process 12, 13, 14 years ago, whatever it was, I thought like, man, okay, bankruptcy, that means I basically take a couple of my kitchen utensils and I get a tent and now I live and then I try to rebuild everything from scratch. And that's just not the case.
No, and the congressional intent around bankruptcy is, again, with people not having the ability to spend because they're locked down by all this debt. For instance, doing a Chapter 7 and wiping the slate clean technically will allow that person to get back out there and contribute to the economy, spending it in other ways. So not necessarily getting back into the credit world, but if these folks or clients weren't able to resolve their debt, they'd be sitting there forever. And so by being able to keep those gears turning of our economic system is better.
Yeah, and I think personally, I think it's so important because we worked every day on retirement planning with people, and we're basically planning and strategizing for the future years. The reality is, you earn most of your income in your mid 40s to basically your late 50s, and then it drastically declines. So if you don't take care of these things, your highest earning years, you're basically not taking advantage of, and you're not having that money set aside for retirement. So then in your golden years, you're having to do things you never wanted to do because you just didn't, talk to a professional like yourself and look and see what options really were there. Because sometimes life happens, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's things like health issues that happen. I know I was freaked out. I'd gone through the heart transplant, and I didn't know. So I just didn't know what it was going to cost and whatnot. So I was like, how do we do this? And there was a lot of legal channels, and I didn't have to go to bankruptcy or anything like that. But you'd given me some guidance on here's some things, and that's why it's so important to have professionals in your life. That number one, give you here's what you can do, but it also sets you at ease knowing that there is a path.
Absolutely.
Right, and that's important. So I know we didn't really talk about this, but I want to talk a little bit about it because there's another part of Majors Law Group, right? You do personal injury.
Yep, this last year has been incredible for our PI practice. We've been litigating more cases. We've had some crazy good results, and if you look outside, there's a million lawyers. There's everyone on billboards and bus stops, and I pride myself that we're not that big because I like being able to connect with every one of my clients. And I try to do that with everybody, whether you're bankruptcy or personal injury. But personal injury for me has been something I've always been passionate about, and every case is very unique. And usually you're dealing with somebody that's been either injured or severely injured, and their life has changed. And then it's my goal to make them as whole as possible and also get the compensation for the injury. So, this morning before, I got here, I was talking to a client that was hit by a DUI, drunk driver in Tucson, and it's a young individual, and her life is, she's just going into school or, starting her college here in the next few months or after the holiday. And I feel so bad for her because, her beginning of college is now going to start with this treatment. And, at the end of the day, I'm just fortunate to be able to help her, and, it's just one step at a time for them. So.
Yeah, so like personal injury, a lot of people hear it, but they don't know what it all entails. Like, what are some good personal injury buckets that you could say that would be worth reaching out to see if maybe you have a claim?
Right. So anybody that's been hurt by another individual or like an entity, like if you slip and fall in a grocery store and you weren't given an adequate warning, or a dog bite, very common are the car accident cases, motor vehicle accidents. If you've been injured by another, generally that's a tort, and you could be entitled to some sort of compensation. I'd say the most common, though, obviously, are, like I said, the motor vehicles. But anybody that's hurt that has a question, I don't mind giving you advice and seeing how we can help. Some cases are tougher, but at the end of the day, I'm very thankful. We now have 6 associates that work for our office. Our supervising injury attorney. He's been doing this for a long time. We're not afraid to litigate cases, and so when someone doesn't want to step up and pay someone for their injuries, I mean, we'll take them to court and proceed with it that way.
Awesome. Yeah. So personal injury, I know you've actually helped a few people I've sent your way as well, and it's a great experience. Obviously, you care about your clients, and I know a lot of attorneys. I have a lot of attorney friends, and I'm lucky because all of them that I know are like you, very similar to where they like their clients, they care. But then I have acquaintances that I know that are in that world, and they aren't. I mean, and I'm sure you see that every day. So it's good to have people like yourself that, yes, care and know your stuff. Like you are dialed in, and you always have been.
Thank you. I'm very lucky. We work with a lot of great professional treatment providers. Every one of the doctors that we send our clients to, as far as a referral, we're all in touch, and so I think that's super important too. Is just staying connected, and it's not just like we're volleying emails. Like we text, we're on the phone, and just making sure our clients are being treated well and taken care of.
I love it. So before we wrap up, I have a few more questions for you. So one is because you kind of grew up in a business. You kind of grew up in the business a little bit, right? You saw a lot because I think you had some family and that stuff. What have you found out about being an attorney that you didn't know when you were going to law school?
Well, I think before I started law school, I had a different mindset as far as how you communicate with people and how you deal with certain stressful situations, right? You might have a more passionate viewpoint, and you might feel, I don't know, more on one side than the other, right? Whatever decision or opinion you have. But as going through law school, I feel like I became more objective in the sense that I understand and I listen, and just because I have a viewpoint doesn't mean I'm right, and that whatever someone's going through isn't reasonable. So I feel like as an attorney, it's given me just better understanding for people's situations, because everyone comes from a different life. You never know what people are going through, and I think it helps me not only connect with my clients but ultimately accomplish their goals. So being more objective is something that since I started law school, you read about all these different cases, you learn about all these different situations, and I think it helps you just make the best decision for your clients in terms of giving them advice and
Awesome. What was because now you're going on 5 years. I've seen the growth. You've done tremendous. What's been the biggest challenge of running your own practice?
I think that's a great question. It's my employees. No, I'm just kidding. No. I'm very thankful to work with a lot of hardworking people. I think just in the legal business in general, it's not really a business, because I'm very fortunate. We have great staff. Everyone shares the same enthusiasm when it comes to helping our clients. So I'm very thankful. I think there's just some things that when it comes to the legal realm, there's just some outcomes that you're not going to get, and that's probably the most deflating thing being an attorney running a business, because there are some cases that you take on and that they're going to be a fight, and we're not afraid to step up for a client, and sometimes it doesn't work out. And so having that tough conversation is usually, it's got to be an eloquent one, right? But I know that when it comes to helping our clients, we do everything we can. We communicate, we let them know the risks. So we don't take on a case saying, yeah, we're gonna slam dunk this and you're gonna get paid, or we're gonna hey, this is what's gonna happen. These are the risks. And so every once in a while you have to have those tough conversations. And as a business owner, you want to see everyone be successful. You want the most desirable outcome. But sometimes it's just not your decision. Sometimes it's things beyond your control.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. Awesome, man. Well, no, this was great. We'll do more of this. I think this was good because it gives people an understanding of bankruptcy, where it's going, if they fit into that mold. Obviously the personal injury side as well. But it'd be fun to have you back and just to talk more kind of about the economy, what's going on, what you foresee, because I know you have a different lens than I have and what I see every day.
Right.
So it'd be kind of cool to have conversation back and forth that would help some folks that listen. So.
Well, I'm just down the road here, literally in the same parking lot. So just let me know.
That is true. So. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Guys, I know you got a lot out of this. There's a lot of great information. If you guys need anything from Dom, calldominic.com.
That's one of them. That's our PI side of it. You can go to Majors Law Group, but calldominic.com. You'll definitely find me. So.
Yeah, awesome. He's on all the socials. He does really good with social media, breaking down some very difficult concepts and talking very specific about it. Like, he was talking about different scenarios with like dog bites or boating accidents and all that kind of stuff. And so follow him there. It gives you kind of an idea of, the expertise. And thank you guys for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you next time.